Hey guys, this is Hal Brady. I'm going to talk to you today about a deck I've been playing in some local PPTQs lately. I did finally take one down this weekend. It's been a lot of fun. I am glad to be out of the modern season for a little bit, but at least I got by with a real sweet deck. Uh, but it's an Eldrazi Tron deck. It's all colorless. I call it all diamonds. That's just me. All of the diamond symbols, the mana cost. But yeah, so the first thing that caught my eye with this deck is the mana base. You don't take any damage from your lands. You don't have any shock lands, pain lands, fetch lands. That's a huge plus against all the aggressive strategies people are playing in Modern right now. We are utilizing the Urzatron, but one thing about the deck, you do not have to get Tron to function. We're not like Red-Green Tron where they have to get to 7 mana to start casting their spells. So it's just kind of a bonus. All of our spells are colorless anyway, so why not? Eldrazi Temple, probably the most unfair land in Modern. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but tapping for 2 mana for the majority of your spells in your deck is pretty absurd. Especially when your creatures feel pretty undercosted as it is. A turn 2 Matter Reshaper, a turn 3 Thought Seer, or even potentially a turn 2 Thought Seer, that's not exactly fair. Not fair magic at all. We are running a full 4 Ghost Quarters because, it taps for the only color we care about, which is, well, no colors. But there's a lot of things Ghost Quarter can help out with. Manland situations, a lot of Blink Moth and Igmoth Nexus run around, Raging Ravine. And against opposing Eldrazi strategies or Tron strategies, help them keep them off of their unfair lands and getting too far ahead of us. We've got 2 basic wastes just to help against opposing Ghost Quarters, Path to Exiles. You don't want to be cold to that. And then our 2 random 1-ofs, Cavernous Souls. They're pretty fantastic for me. We just have the 1-of. We have the 4 expedition map, so it's there if you need it against any kind of blue counterspell strategies. Making Thanatir Reality Smasher unfair is unfair. Uncounterable is unfair, rather. Seagate Wreckage, kind of the one that pops out when I show people the list. They're like, really? But it's been pretty impressive, actually. If you get Tron assembled pretty quickly, you can dump your hand very easily. So Seagate Wreckage help you drawing 2 cards a turn can really put you ahead of your opponent pretty quickly. So we'll get to the spells. We kind of already talked about Expedition Map. Usually if I already have 2 pieces of Tron, obviously I'm going to go get the 3rd. But if not, I'm just going to go get an Eldrazi Temple if I'm looking to accelerate my mana. You do find yourself in situations getting a Ghost Quarter or a Cavernous Souls in those situations. And then in the late game, if you've already got all the mana you can ask for, you just go get a Seagate Wreckage. Start taking advantage of that. And then we have our removal suite. Spatial Contortion kills most early creatures in the format, if not all of them. And then, at the very least, it's not a dead card versus decks without creatures, control decks, and all that. You can just use it to giant growth your Thought Seer, Reality Smasher, any of your big guys, just to make your clock a little faster. And it's not just a dead card sitting in your hand. Warping Well, super versatile. There's actually a lot of creatures in Modern that do only have toughness or power 1 or less. The list is pretty long. Almost anything in Infect, Affinity, Snapcaster Mage, Dark Confidant, Igmoth, Blink Moth, Nexus. There's a lot of things. Noble Hierarch, Birds of Paradise. The list just kind of goes on. There's a lot of things in the company decks and Eldritch Evolution decks. Some of the early guys you can take out. Wall of Roots. This guy, Spellskite. But then countering Target Sorcery doesn't come up very often, but it can. You can counter a Thoughtseize, you can counter Escape Shift, you can counter an Eldritch Evolution I did once, was pretty sweet. And then at the very least you need to throw it away, make a 1/1 Scion, you can chump block, get some of these guys out a turn earlier. Spellskite. Spellskite's the one I'm not really sure about in the main deck. Some of your tougher matchups, like Burn and Infects and Bogles, definitely can help. Bogles, you're pretty dead game 1 if you don't have a Spellskite, and even then, it's not great. So I don't know if they're worth it. The deck is usually trying to be fairly aggressive. You're not looking to block that often, but it helps versus the burn strategies and the super aggressive decks. Dismembered. This card basically can only cost 1 in our deck. Again, since we don't take damage from our lands, the 4 life paid usually isn't that big of a deal. It's not that big of a cost. It kills a lot of things, and for 1 mana, it definitely can get you ahead. Matter Reshaper. Yeah, I'm starting to compare this card to Bloodbraid Elf. I might be wrong. I'm probably wrong, but this card's really good for 3 mana. Yeah, it always gets you an extra card. The first time you flip your 3rd Tron piece off of this thing, yeah, this guy's pretty good. He's been really powerful. Thought Not Seer. Yeah, everybody knows what this guy does. And in Modern, taking a card out of your opponent's hand and exiling it, it's usually pretty good. I don't know very many decks that's not pretty insane against. But 4/4 is also huge in this format. Reality Smasher, getting to close the game out pretty quick. It's another thing I like about the deck. You kind of get control of the earlier mid game, and then you close it out real fast with your big guys. Inbringer. It's probably my favorite card in the deck. The deck's super cool. The card, I mean, is super cool. It just does everything. 5/5 is huge in Modern. Just like we talked about with Warping Well, there's a lot of cards in the format that have 1 toughness. So just the ping ability can take out a lot of things. And then if they do have something that's too big or getting out of hand, target creature not being able to attack or block, and then if there's nothing else, you attack for 5 on your turn, their turn, draw a card. It's pretty good. Endless One. It's not super powerful, but it's very versatile. In the early game, if you need a 3/3 or a 4/4, and I've cast it as big as a 20/20 before in the late game with all your mana sources. So it's not super exciting, but it's always a card you can cast in the mid game, early game, late game. And then, other than the mana base, Ulamog, I think, is what sets this deck apart from the Bant Eldrazi strategies. Yeah, you get to 10 mana pretty often. And this guy, yeah, he's pretty hard to deal with. He's been pretty good. He's pretty silly in Modern. Path is basically one of the only ways you can deal with it, and he closes the game out real quick. So that's the main deck. Your overall strategy, you can have aggressive hands, but you're usually not a super aggressive deck. You're usually looking to close the game out in the mid game. You've got your removal for their early guys. Matter Reshaper is a fantastic blocker. And then when you get to Thought Not Seer, start tearing apart their hand. And then Reality Smasher closes the game out real fast. If you get stuck in some situations, Inbringer can usually dig you out of those. So when I first started playing the deck, I was a little worried about your sideboard options for an all-colorless deck. But these cards are pretty good. Chalice of the Void's very unfair against a lot of the decks that are only playing, or majority playing 1 mana costing spells. In your main deck, you only have Expedition Map, and against those decks like Burn, Infect, Death Shadow, I usually take out 2 to 3 maps anyway, if not all of them, just so now I have nothing that costs 1. So I put it on 1 and almost lock them out of the game. Against Burn, if you get a Chalice on 1 and a Chalice on 2, it's basically game over. There's nothing they can do after that, outside of like maybe Rift Bolt. All His Dust has been very good. It's really good against the Collected Company decks, the Eldritch Evolution decks, the Bogle decks. I used to bring in a couple against Jund just to deal with some of their creatures and their Liliana Planeswalker, just to kind of a catch-all. Something I didn't realize at first, it is an Eldrazi tribal spell. So Eldrazi Temple can actually tap 2 to cast towards that. That comes up. So this card usually only costing 6, and then maybe even less lands involved if you've already got Tron. And the fact that you get to keep all of your guys, that's pretty unfair. We'll get to this one in a minute. Ratchet Bomb is probably the least exciting card. It's necessary against decks like Elves, Merfolk, anything putting any guys out, costing 1 or 2 real early just to kind of help you with that maybe before you can get to an All His Dust. Or against a deck like Bogles, you can bring in Ratchet Bomb and All His Dust. Now you've got plenty of ways to catch their guys. Relic of Progenitus, your only way to really interact with the graveyard. Good against Snapcaster decks, Dredge, Malira combo decks, Kitchen Finks of the like. Then we have the Basilisk Collar. I've really been impressed with this card. I really wanted to get a second one in, but we haven't Haven't figured out how to do that quite yet. But equip creature gets Death Touch and Lifelink against Burn. You put this on a 4/4 or a 5/5, and they have some real issues. I also bring it in against Jund just to, your smaller guys can square up very easily against their big Tarmogoyf or Tasker or whatever they might have. And then sweet little combo we have with Inbringer. You give an Inbringer Death Touch, and you ping something for 1, and it doesn't matter how big it is, it's dead. That comes up. Done that a couple times. It's pretty sweet. So that's the 75. We'll get into some games and see what we can do with this deck.